It's a 6th for the 7th, 2025. The time is 33 minutes past 10. That means one thing. It's race day, the British Grand Prix, and it's going to get techier than techie things. I cannot wait, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, for what we're about to witness. One for the ages. Some might say it's going to be Oscar and it's going to be Max. Two of the best to have ever done it, potentially. One of the best, if not the best to have ever done it. Listen, over the next 10 minutes, we're going to talk about a couple of things because, of course, there are F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Ferrari chaos. Both drives doing one of these. Mea culpa, I am sorry. Charles Leclerc saying, fudge, fudge, fudge. I am so SH1T. We'll talk about that. So too, we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen and what everybody is saying. Andrea Stella saying that I'm not surprised. He's Max Verstappen. He can do anything as near as makes no difference. Ronald Vording has come out and spoken about what drove Max Verstappen to get the pole. What were the key causing factors? We'll talk about that. There's another couple of bits and bobs that I want to talk about as well. King George, contract negotiations. Julian Sarasoli has come out and said that Toto, the boy who cried wolf, is playing hardball with George at the altar of Maximilian Verstappen with a view to lowball him on his contract value. Oh, the humanity. Let's talk in the first instance, as your boy's alarm goes off, of course. Let's talk in the first instance about Scuderia Ferrari because they came into Silverstone, the British Grand Prix, in chaos. It was the car, it was Frederick Vasseur, it was operational inefficiency and or ineptitude. That's why they were being so rubbish for so long, eh? Brian, you're large, by the way. But now, you got to look at this through a different lens, eh? Because all of a sudden they had the car. The bloody floor upgrade that they brought to Austria is all of a sudden working. They've tapped on a couple bits and bobs, fairing. Nothing worth declaring. Nothing worthy of note. This is still the same SF25 in brass tacks terms. Ferrari could have put it on pole. Zach Brown said that he thought McLaren, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris were competing with their red cars and the yellow badge with the black prancing horse atop. Ergo Lewis had the opportunity. It was right there in his hands. Sector 1, Sector 2 as near as makes no difference. Purple sectors cumulatively. All you needed to do therefore, Sir Lewis, is go and nail yourself a Sector 3. But you couldn't do it, yet again failing at the final hurdle. Is that not the common denominator over the past 36 months in Sir Lewis Hamilton's qualifying performance? I think it might be. Then how about Charles Leclerc, aka modern day journalese? A performance worthy of the moniker yet again, and a reaction so too. Charles Leclerc came over the radio in stark contrast to Sir Lewis Hamilton's mea culpa, I'm sorry, and said, fudge, 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 just like the wire McNulty and Bunk. Fudge, 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 I am so SH1T. Cast your mind back to Paul Ricard. Charles Leclerc is not one, he's never been shy as far as lambasting himself, particularly at the altar of errors of the unforced variety. Does Charles Leclerc have it? Does he have it in his locker to challenge, I don't know, a Max Verstappen or an Oscar Jack Piastri who make, as near as makes no difference, zero mistakes? Non-rhetorical question. You guys need to help me with that. Let me know in the chat. Here's why this is important. Because I and you and we have been talking about Frederick Vasseur and the chaos and the lack of leadership and that they're not disruptors in the way that they were 2000 to 2004 Jean Todt settings when Michael Schumacher won as near as makes no difference every single bloody race. But here now you've got to call into question Charles and Lewis, because it was right there in the palm of their hands. But yet again, Ferrari, this time because of the drivers and their ineptitude, their mistakes, their errors of the unforced variety, now because of them, they seize defeat from the jaws of victory. You can't blame the bloody pit stops, 2.0 seconds. You can't blame Frederick Vasseur for this. You can't say that the SF25 didn't have the minerals, the requisite pace to drop it on pole, because it did. It did. All of the aforementioned Scuderia Ferrari ticked them their boxes. This is not Frederick Vasseur, nor is it because he didn't sign Adrian Newey, because the car was plenty fast enough. How do you know? Well, switch Max Verstappen and put him in that red car and see if he doesn't drop it on pole. Therein lies the difference. Oh, and by the way, regarding George Russell, Julian Sarasoli, for the avoidance of doubt, or F1 journalists are created equal E, but some are created more equal than others. Sarasoli is one of the good ones in the know. Paddock settings, and she said this about the ongoing conversation between Toto and Maximilian Verstappen, that Toto's using that primarily to try and lowball King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, to try and pull down his negotiating value. You know what, mate? You can't. We're not going to give you 50 million a year or anything like that, because for that money we can go and get ourselves Max Verstappen. We're having conversations with him. Yeah, he came back and approached us, King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, but don't get above your station. And I think if that's true, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 True, that's a pity. Bearing in mind that of the two drivers who put forth their case to be driver of the year, one is called Maximilian Verstappen and the second is called King George Russell. What are we doing here, Toto? Put some respect on George Russell's name. Why don't you? How very dare you? But I would see Julianne Sarasoli that and raise her this. Toto, the boy who cried wolf, will dropkick in the chest George Russell if he has a chance at signing one Maximilian Verstappen. You can take that one to the bank. You can see it's coming out of his pores. He absorbs that atmosphere, that desire even by osmosis. Toto wants to fix for the errors of 2015 when he had the opportunity to sign the next one in Maximilian Verstappen and didn't do it. There was no room at the Mercedes in at that time. Oh, and by the way, got to talk about some Maximilian Verstappen. Seems like Christian Horner's the only one that doesn't want to give Maximilian Verstappen the credit that he so deserves. Talking about Maximilian Verstappen with a view to reduce the dependency, the Red Bull dependency on that dude's performance. But it's too late for all of that, Christian Horner. It's too late. You have a key man dependency, and if Maximilian Verstappen leaves, you're going to find out what that means. I promise you, no one in that Red Bull Racing family, not Arvid Lindblad, not Tsunoda-san, not Liam Lawson, not anybody else, they won't be able to drive that car. You've already given Liam Lawson the opportunity. Where was he? Yuki Tsunoda yesterday, 1 second down the road. What's that all about? The car is far too temperamental, too snap oversteer to understeer, snap oversteer to understeer. No one else can drive that car. Now, Ronald Vording's come out and said a couple of different things as far as how Maximilian Verstappen managed to get it done yesterday, because it's chaos settings. I'll volunteer a couple before we go into what Ronald Vording said. And again, more acutely connected and aware of the Max Verstappen circumstance than I or you or we. Here's what I think. I think Max Verstappen has got his 10,000 hours in. I think he's probably 20 or 30,000 hours at this stage. Max Verstappen is the dude that as soon as he jumps out the car every single weekend, just goes and jumps back in the sim. The practice, the dotted line between practice and in real life is seamless now. So advanced are the sims and the Fanatec's and the bloody pedal. Like, it's techier than techie things. And Max Verstappen spends all of his free time in the sim. That's your first thing. The second thing, we go back to Jos Verstappen and the way that he made him practice, the extent to which Maximilian had to practice to perfect his craft. So when you're talking about driving around the multitudinous aerodynamic and mechanical foibles of the RB21, who better in the world than Max Verstappen to do that? He has all the minerals, all the bloody skills honed to a T. And what's more, it's not just about the speed in absolute terms. Charles Leclerc's quick too. So too Oscar Piastri. Lando's quick when he's had his Weetabix. But Max Verstappen has always had his Weetabix. He's always on job. Safak, Maximilian means the greatest. Well, this full name, Maximilian Verstappen, he does his name justice, I get. Like, he's always on job. Safak's far too kind as well. He's always had his Weetabix, and herein lies the problem confronted to the other 19 on the grid. Andrea Stella came out and said this, that Max Verstappen doesn't even surprise me. I am well aware that that dude can do anything at this point. He puts it together when it matters most in a way that none of the others can. What are you talking about, Cameron? Well, the McLaren had the fastest car. Silverstone is their natural habitat. Of course, it is medium-high speed. Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, you're having a laugh. But then when you look at that sector, bearing in mind that Max Verstappen took downforce out of his car, specifically out of the rear wing, and shouldn't be able to live with an Oscar or a Lando through them, their twisties, Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, And then you see Max Verstappen is losing not even 1 millisecond to Oscar Piastri, a fire-breathing dragon of a peddler in the best car in F1 currently. Not even a millisecond through that sector. How, Sway? This makes no sense. He's bending the space-time continuum at this point, doing impossible things. That's ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. And F1 maths is always going to be a thing. If you rate Oscar and you know what that MCL 39 is capable of doing, then you've got to rate Maximilian Verstappen and what he did per Andrea Stella, who knows that he shouldn't be surprised at this point. Colour me naive, because Maximilian Verstappen is omnipotent at this point, jumps in the car and can do anything, and that's not me embellishing. Ronald Vording gets into detail, techier than techie things, with a view to explain how and why Max Verstappen was able to put together that qualifying lap, and he explains it with 3 things in mind. In the first instance, there was an upgrade, an Austrian Grand Prix upgrade from Red Bull, and they upgraded the floor, body and floor fences. Tick, tick. But yet again, you saw in FP1, FP2, FP3 that it was temperamental. Max was complaining about everything, the brakes, the fact that it was understeery to snap oversteer at apex and combined engine. It was techie. Maximilian Verstappen was struggling in the car. Yuki Tsunoda 1 second behind him, didn't even make it through to Q3. So what are we talking about here? The upgrade helped, but it couldn't get them over the line. Key thing here is that they tinker for the setup in the second instance. Max said, you know what, this car's not working, just take out all downforce out the rear wing, so at the very least I can bank on some speed in the straights. When we get to the corners, I'll work it out, leave it to me. Do you know what I mean? I will do the witchcraft to get this car around these Silverstone turns. That's your second instance. Your exhibit C in the third is of course the Maximilian Verstappen factor per helmet Marco. If you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs, then one day you will be a man, my son, Rudyard Kipling, and that's epitomised in what Maximilian Verstappen was able to do in the dying embers of Q3. Lando Norris said it once, not too many cycles ago, that the chap who wins the race weekend will normally be the one who trends for his mistakes down to 0 or as near as makes no difference. Here's what you know. Lewis Hamilton made mistakes in sector 3. Charles Leclerc's lap was less than perfect. Oscar Piastri made mistakes on the final bloody turn. Lando Norris was much less than perfect. Maximilian Verstappen, however, was as near as makes no difference. Impeccable. Immaculate conception settings, perfection, and that's what separates him from the rest. He's got too big a data bank. He can manipulate the car in and on around the limits of adhesion in a way that's almost uncanny. He lives and breathes and exists with the car almost like they are the symbiosis of one another, and therein lies the difference, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. The bookmakers had him at plus 900, 9-1. 11% of the time they were saying that he was going to drop it on pole. That lets you know that there is no room for revisionist historians, not in this now. All heads must bow, all tongues must confess that Maximilian Verstappen is operating at unprecedented levels of sporting endeavour par excellence. The bookies have learned their lesson going into the race today, later on in a few hours, and they say that Maximilian Verstappen, notwithstanding the fact that it's going to be a battle fought on the grounds of tyre degradation, and Maximilian Verstappen has less downforce in his wing to fight that battle. That notwithstanding, the bookmakers still have him now as the favourite to win the Silverstone Grand Prix, notwithstanding the fact that the MCL 39, in the hands particularly of one Oscar Piastri, is the quickest car on the grid. These are unprecedented times, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, and I'm revelling in it. I live for this level of unbridled, no unprecedented, no untrammelled excellence in the upper echelons of motorsport, the Reardon Wacky world that they call the one, the Fs. I will see you in a couple of hours, 30 minutes before lights out, for what promises to be an epic seminal moment in this, the F1 2025 season. What are we doing here?